Steve Dace joining us from the Michigan podcast. Please join him on iTunes or on YouTube, whatever your platform of preference. And Steve, every time you drop a name and then getting a feel already for how much knowledge you have stored about college football history, it's wanting me to digress to a foregone year, like when you may mention Shane Morris or Devin Gardner. I will throw out Devin Gardner, so I don't want to take away from the 2017 discussion for too long. But I was fascinated by his career in the sense that, correct me if I'm wrong, from my remembrance, the team that he took over lost 5 games. They went 8-5. It was the team that lost in the last few seconds of the Outback Bowl to South Carolina that year, and they lost to some of the best teams in the country that year. They lost an extremely close game to Notre Dame, who went to the national championship game. They lost to the undefeated Ohio State team, and on and on. I thought they were that close, and I thought, man, if this kid is this good, moving from wide receiver to quarterback mid-season, and I saw it in him that he could be a really good quarterback, and man, this team is ready to turn the switch and return Michigan football, and it just never happened for him or the team.
You know, Devin Gardner's a great young man. I think he graduated in under 3 years, was already well into his graduate work at Michigan before he exhausted his football eligibility. I mean, this is the guy that you want picking your daughter up. You know what I'm saying? I mean, this is the kind of guy that when he runs for office, you don't even look at where he's at on the issues because he's just such an impressive human being. You're like, yeah, you look and sound like the guy who should be my congressman. All right. And you're so right, Mark, in your observation about how he broke through. Remember, Denard Robinson got hurt that primetime game against Nebraska. And if they had won that game, if they had held on and won that game, Michigan actually would have gone to the Big Ten championship game that year instead of the Huskers. Denard Robinson gets hurt. Devin Gardner is actually the leading receiver for Michigan. He still led him in touchdown catches that year. So he has not been repping at quarterback. So they put another young man named Russell Bellamy, who just wasn't ready for that spot. He kind of had a meltdown, and it wasn't his fault. He just wasn't ready. And so the next week they go on the road to Minnesota. Devin Gardner lights them up. The game after that, they play Iowa at home. He's Big Ten Player of the Week. The game after that, they have a huge win against Northwestern, who that was the team, you remember, that finally was the first Northwestern team to win a bowl game. And he leads them back from behind in overtime, throws for well over 300 yards again. And we're sitting around here thinking, this is robo quarterback. And then you go to the very next season. They had that primetime game against Notre Dame where they busted out the throwback jerseys. And I think he was even the National Player of the Week. He was phenomenal in that game under the lights. And then for whatever reason, it just didn't work. And, you know, there's certain players, every program has certain players that you're just like, you know, what if we had had this guy at another time when the program was on more stable footing and there was better coaching? Like, you look at what Michigan's doing now in their recruiting, where Jim is actually looking for Colin Kaepernick type of quarterbacks, meaning guys who can succeed in the pocket, but when the play breaks down, can do something out of the pocket. That's the most underrated thing about Wilton Spate. I think he's actually better outside of the pocket, at least what we saw last year, than even standing tall in the pocket. And so you look at guys they're recruiting, like this Joe Milton, this kid they have coming in from the state of Florida, who is that sort of a model guy where he can make a play. He's not a spread quarterback, but he's got the mobility that on 3rd and 6, if nobody's open, he can scramble for a first down. Jake Rudock did this masterfully in Jim's first season. His passing game really didn't come on to the last month. The first month or two, he was the biggest asset in scrambling for first downs on 3rd down when nobody was open. Well, I think Devin Gardner, if he had this quarterback coach with the program on the solid footing it's on right now, I think you're talking about a guy who had all-American, all-world type of potential, and he just kind of had a star-crossed career. The timing just didn't line up for him.